Just because you have the power to do something, should you? Welcome to the Complete Story Series, where I take trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read it dramatically back to you. All alterations of the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. This is a story about Hyperion, an individual in the Marvel Universe with very similar powers to Superman. In Merkel, Nebraska, a man stops by a truck stop and a girl thinks, "This is the one. I have a good feeling about this guy." After getting a few things, the man gets ready to leave and the girl runs up to him telling him she needs a ride. At first, the man tells her no, but after a bit of a puppy dog stare and fake crying, the man decides to give her a lift. As they drive, she tells him thanks. Her name's Doll. What's his? And he tells her, Mark. As she thinks to herself, sure, whatever, Mark. Mark says that he's delivering a load of apples to Kansas and it's going to be a long drive, so she should probably get some rest. Normally, Doll wouldn't fall asleep around some trucker, but she needs a hero. And she trusts him, so she sleeps. As the night falls and Doll wakes back up, she notices that Mark is gone. When she looks outside, she sees him going to check on a broken down car to see if anyone needs help. But as Doll looks at the car, she knows that car and who drives it. A man sneaks up on Mark and hits him with a crowbar and then slams the hood of the car down on him. The man's name is Benny, and he's here to take Doll home. The family's waiting for her. Benny starts to climb inside of the truck to get Doll, but she manages to hit his head on the roof and push him to the back of the cab of the truck. As Benny gets back up, Mark appears behind him telling him, "Get away from the girl." And then he knocks him away with a large tree branch. Mark gets back into the truck and the two of them take off, but as Benny watches the truck leave, he makes a call stating, "I found the girl. Bring the family." Back in the cab, Mark asks exactly what was that all about, and Doll says that she's a runaway. A mechanic, actually. And that's who she's running from. They call themselves the family, and all they know is violence. But then Mark looks in his rearview mirror and tells her, "We have company." Behind them, the Carnival folk begin to close in on them, shooting guns at the truck, and the contortionist, Connie, jumps aboard the truck, and Doll tells Mark, "Look, I know who you are. You're a hero." And Mark says, "I don't know who you think I am, but you're wrong. My name is Marcus Milton." Soon, another truck in the distance appears and begins to head towards them. Connie starts to climb through the window, grabbing Doll, and through her struggles, she tells Mark to help her. Hyperion! Mark turns his head, and then he fires his atomic vision at Connie, and then he grabs Doll, and the two of them fly through the roof of the car. The oncoming truck and semi collide, and Mark takes Doll away, setting her up in the nearby woods. She tells him, "I knew it was you," and he tells her, "Wait." But before leaving, she asks, "What, are you going to hurt them?" And Mark tells her, "No, I'm going to teach them." The next morning, Mark flies Doll to the next county, and as they pass through, Doll asks if they can stop by the bus stop down there. Mark tells her that she should be safe, and she tells him he's not leaving her. She's just looking for something. Soon, a dog begins to growl, and when it sees Doll, it jumps up licking her. Mark turns to leave, but Doll tells him, "Wait, I'm your responsibility now. Those freaks might come back." He tells her, "You tricked me. This isn't my fight." But Doll says, "I didn't trick anyone. I needed help and you're a hero. The least you could do is take me to get some food." He tells her that he can't take both her and the dog. And Doll says, "Really? You're no one special and don't have superpowers?" Mark stares at her, and then the dog starts to sniff and then lick. And finally, Mark says, "Fine, I know a place." Elsewhere in the county, a man begins to talk to a correctional facility, and when he gets inside, he shows the guard his ID. And the guard tells him, "It's all good, Mr. Harkadin. You've got plenty of friends," as he shows him his mark on his wrist. The man waits as the Carnies from before come out beat up and dirty from their fight with Mark. And the man says, "I'm disappointed. The girl's gone and the truck's borked. I just have one question. Who did this?" Mark goes to make a phone call in the diner while Doll sits and eats, but then a sad man walks into the diner. As he sits, everyone begins to comfort the man, asking if there's been any word from the cops, and he tells them, "No, we're not even sure if it was a murder." Doll goes back outside with her dog, and Mark tells her she's all paid up, so this should conclude their time together. And she tells him, "Yeah, about that, see that man in the diner? His daughter was murdered, and I promised that we would help." Mark begins to tell her, "You mean my help? The only thing you're helping me with is getting into another mess. Who do you think I am?" Doll pulls out a scrapbook stating, "This is who you are. You're a guy pretending to be a truck driver when you're really a super ultra mega hero. Fine, just this once. I'll look into it." The two of them head over to the crime scene where the man's daughter and boyfriend were found. Mark begins to poke around, and then he picks up one of the worms covering the car. Doll says that these dead worms were in their mouths and ears, and their stomachs were full of them, and their hearts were gonish. Mark takes a closer look at the worms and notices that they have human cells, not in them, but as a part of them. Doll's dog begins to sniff and pick up a scent, and they begin to follow it. And as they walk, Mark asks why she went to the trouble of looking for him. Why did the family want you? She tells him that her parents are dead and she is a foster child and the family abducted her for she doesn't know what. So Mark tells her that he thinks that she knows but won't tell him. And soon he stops and he looks in the house in front of her, telling her to look at it. And she says, "Hello there, creepy house." They start to look around and Mark says that they need to find out what's inside, and after ripping the door off, they go inside and see everything is dirty and human decomposition around them. Mark says that there's more of that girl's DNA here. So Dahl looks over the table and notices some carnival tickets and begins to say, "No, no, no, no. How is the carnival connected?" And then a giant worm creature grabs a hold of Dahl. Mark blasts at the creature trying to get it to drop Dahl, but then Dahl notices his blasts are starting to shoot all over the place. And when she looks back at Mark, she sees that the worms have started to cover him. The worms begin to crawl in and out of Mark and his blasts start destroying the house. Dahl begins to take cover but then notices a toaster. She tells him to hold on and she cuts the wires, exposing it, and she tells herself that she hopes Hyperion has regenerative powers. She takes the wire and shocks Mark, freeing him of the worms, but as Mark falls to his knees, he then falls on his face and Dahl says, "Crap, I killed him!" The worms begin to retreat as Mark coughs up the last bit of worms inside of him, and Dahl helps him up, and while he tries to catch his breath, he asks Dahl to hand him one of the worms. As he looks at it, she says he's doing that thing again, and Mark tells her he can see things all the way down to the microscopic level. These worms have traces of superhuman genes and alien DNA. The two of them begin to leave while Dahl helps Mark walk, and he says, "We need to stop that monster." Dahl asks him why. She dragged him into this, why stick around? And Mark begins to tell her that his father once wanted him to be a teacher, a leader. He was raised on 3 principles: truth without compromise, thought without error, and all things for the betterment of the whole. He would have him kill 1 to save 1,000, and now he's lost and tired of killing. He's just not sure if his father was right or if he just misunderstood people, and maybe he himself isn't up to the task. So he decided to start small, but first he needs to know everything about the carnival and about her. So Dahl explains that her mother was an airplane mechanic, but soon she got sick and passed away, and that's when the freaks showed up. She tried to run away from them, but Micah Hartigan, or as people call him, Junior, told her that this was her home now and that he was her father. Junior uses the carnival as a base of operations for a group that he calls the Children of Liberty, a freedom-loving militia, but really all she's seen them do is sell guns and drugs. They even own people like politicians and cops. So after hearing the rumors about Hyperion around the carnival, she just knew that she had to find them. Mark then asks, "What about the freaks? Where did they come from?" Dahl goes on stating that Junior created them using his haunted house. Some people go in and they never come out, while others go in and they come out changed. She was supposed to go in, but she ran away instead, and that's when she found Mark. Mark tries to ask if she recognized the monster's face, but she says she's not sure. Right now, he needs to recover before he does anything. So Mark tells her he knows a place where he can. They'll find the killer in the morning. The two of them head to a motel, and Dahl decides to take a quick shower, and when she gets out, she notices that Mark has left. Over at the carnival, Junior finishes up a phone call when worms begin to crawl through the window, and as he pulls out a gun, he says, "Damn it, Charlie." Charlie tells him, "Hey, big brother, I'm sorry, I just killed some more people." And Junior tells him, "You're supposed to be looking for the little girl." The two of them head outside, and Charlie explains that there was a man with her, and that's when Mark throws a bumper car through the wall and steps through, asking Junior, "Is this a bad time?" The fight with the freaks begins, and Mark finds himself in a situation that's more than he can truly handle. He fights off what he can by blasting one freak and tossing another aside, but just as he frees himself from Connie, who wrapped himself around him, Charlie stands there with his worms beginning to grab Mark. Later, after the fight, Dahl receives a call from Junior telling her that if she doesn't come home, they'll kill her friend. As Dahl arrives, she asks where her friend is, and Junior says she knows where, and she'll see him soon enough. The freaks take Dahl away, and then they walk her into the haunted house and they close the door behind her. She starts to walk through the house, and when she turns the corner at the end, she sees Charlie standing there holding Mark. Charlie says that they've never met properly. He's her Uncle Charlie, and they should talk more. But step on up. Soon tentacles begin to reach out to Dahl, and she hears the voices stating that they will make her different, make her better. But as they grab her, she sees something. Whatever it is that is inside her head, she also sees it in its head. She starts to see its home being destroyed, and then during its escape, it found its way to Earth. Whatever this is that is making these people into weird things is an alien, and it crash landed on Earth where men found it, took it, and the creature began to feel pain, fear, and hatred. Junior and his men then took the creature and nailed it to a board inside of the haunted mansion. It changes people not to improve them, but to punish them. Dahl tells her that if it lets her go, she will free it, and then the creatures get out of her head. She runs up kicking a mirror, and she takes the pieces that start popping the nails out that are holding the creature, and Charlie begins to call for help. The worms begin to let go of Mark, and then they grab onto Dahl, but with the worms slowly being moved off of Mark, he begins to stand up again. More and more of Dahl is being covered, and through the struggle, she tells Mark, "The mirrors!" The freaks begin to surround him, but then he thinks about the mirrors and he begins to blast one, reflecting it across the entire room. The haunted house begins to shine while the creatures escape, and right behind it, out flies Mark and Doll. Mark begins blasting down, destroying the carnival, and as it burns, he flies off. But through the rubble, a voice says, Hyperion has been very bad, but it's okay. His love, Thundra, is here to save him from himself. Even though Mark thought that Junior was dead, he allowed Doll to come with him on his journey to protect her from any other carnival incidents. The problem is, Thundra decided to chase down Mark and make him her lover again. Eventually, they worked it out after fighting, and one of the individuals from the carnival was tracking Mark this whole time. He caught the individual and asked where Junior is, using the help of Thundra. Meanwhile, back at the motel where Doll was left, she heard a knock at the door, and when she goes to answer it, Iron Man tells her, "Hi there, is there a hyper-powered war criminal home?" Mark returns back to the hotel and he sees Tony Stark standing there telling him, "Hey, I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd say hi. People are a bit twitchy about the whole killing Namor thing, so you're gonna have to come with me, Mark." Moments later, Tony is thrown from the motel room and Mark tells Doll, "We need to go, your father is," but Tony grabs him from the room and flies off. The two of them struggle in the middle of the air, and after headbutting Tony, Mark then grabs him and flies off. He flies into a pool, choking Tony, telling him, "You're a distraction, leave me alone." And Tony tells him, "Speaking of distractions, know anything about sterile neutrons?" "Of course you do. It provides dark radiation, which is the counter to your radiation, Hyperion." A beam shines from Tony's chest, grabbing Mark and levitating him and restricting him from any type of movement. Mark tells him, "Release me." And Tony tells him, "You're dangerous, like a nuclear bomb dangerous, and you killed my friend, so you're coming with me." Mark begins to argue that Namor was a monster, and Tony asks, "What then? Eye for an eye? Decapitation for a decapitation?" But as Tony continues, a can is thrown at his head. Rude. Tony looks over to see Doll is throwing cans at him, and behind her is Thundra swinging her chain. Tony asks if they've met, because it kind of feels like it, and the mace flies into Tony's chest, slamming him into a wall. Mark gets free, and Tony climbs out of the pool, stating, "I think it just broke my neutrino ray. In my heart. I mean, quite literally, you broke my heart." As Tony stands back up, he tells Mark, "You're not leaving. You have a murder to answer for." And Mark tells him, "That is a problem for another day. Right now, an enemy army is coming here for that little girl, and I plan on standing in its way." Doll asks him what he's talking about, and he tells her, "Thundra and I discovered that Junior isn't dead, and he's bringing everyone to get you." Tony tells him, "Alright, I'll stay with you to stop them, Hyperion, but after that you're coming with me." And Mark tells him, "No, you take Doll away from here. Keep her safe." And then Thundra tells everyone, "We have to go." Mark sees the cars and the trucks coming and tells Tony, "Take Doll away. If you do that, I will consider following you." Tony tells him that those are people in those cars. They're not monsters, they're humans. And Mark tells him, "They are monsters. They are bad people following an evil man, and it will end for them now. And if you try and stop me, you will die too." Tony grabs Doll, and Mark tells him that she saved him. And she was right. He is a hero. Just not the kind that she thought, or what his father believed him to be. Tony blasts off, leaving Mark and Thundra. And Mark turns to Thundra and tells her, "Get clear and make sure no one escapes." As Mark steps out to face Junior, he thinks to himself how he wants to be a better person. Be good and bad, moral and evil. Those are simple ideas for simple creatures. He is not a simple creature. Though he wants to be a better person, he cannot speak to truth, or compromise, or what is best for the whole. He can only speak to what he is. The problem with him wanting to be a better person is that he's not a person at all. He's not human. He is not of this world. He can be no better than what he is now, and that's a god. To make sure he ends things, he will destroy everything. And he rockets back down from space, causing an explosion so massive, everything is wiped out. He stands in the aftermath of the explosion, and he looks down to see Junior slowly reconstructing himself. So he grabs him, telling him, "I don't need to kill you. I can simply contain you, and that's in space." And he brings him up and leaves him floating there. As Doll walks up to the court to see about being emancipated, she thanks Tony. And Tony asks her, "He's not coming back, is he?" And she tells him, "I doubt it." "Well, I still need to bring him to justice. By the way, what are you gonna name this dog? Maybe Tony or Starky Poo?" And she tells him that she thinks she's gonna call the dog Mark. And that 100% concludes the Hyperion storyline. You may have noticed that it kind of felt like they ended the arc and then had to quickly resolve it. That's because this book was sadly canceled after this 6th issue. Luckily, we got some resolution to the entire Hyperion storyline, but it's still a very sad day. Let me know in the comments down below if you would have loved to have seen more Hyperion, and that's all I can really ask for because we have no more to cover. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you next time right here at Comicstorian, or you can talk to me on Twitter at Comicstorian.